Hello everyone, I'm Brazen Eagle and thank you for joining me here. So, today we have some news from Italy about politicians and globalists doing whatever it takes to stop actual reforms for the Italian people from the BBC. So, Italy crisis. The Democratic Party, the PD, and the Five Star Movement Party agree coalition deal after talks. The leaders of Italy's center-left Democratic Party, the PD, and populist Five Star Movement have agreed to form a coalition government. We consider it worthwhile to try this experience, the Democratic Party's Nicola Zingaretti said after meeting the president on Wednesday, the deadline for any deal. It was agreed that Giuseppe Conte should stay on as prime minister. The planned joint administration will serve until the next scheduled elections in 2023 on Tuesday. Five-star leader Luigi Di Maio welcomed what he referred to as the Democratic Party's willingness to accept Mr. Conte's reappointment. The two parties, traditionally staunch rivals, have been holding tense talks following the collapse of the previous coalition government last week. In difficult times like these, shunning our responsibility to have the courage to try this is something we cannot afford, Mr. Zingaretti said. President Sergio Mattarella, who met party leaders in Rome to try to chart a way forward, has summoned Mr. Conte to a meeting on Thursday morning. He is widely expected to give a mandate to form a new government. How did we get here, though? The two parties have been in discussion since Mr. Conte resigned as prime minister in dramatic fashion last week. His decision came after Matteo Salvini, the leader of the Nationalist League Party, tabled a no-confidence motion against him. During his August 20th resignation speech, Mr. Conte launched a blistering attack on Mr. Salvini, accusing him of being irresponsible. And a picture of President Sergio Mattarella on the left shakes hands with Mr. Salvini on the right. Mr. Salvini's League Party has been in power with the anti-establishment Five Star Movement for 14 months, when he effectively ended the coalition, saying he could no longer work with his partners. Both Mr. Salvini and Forza Italia leader Silvio Berlusconi called for fresh elections after meeting President Mattarella. A major blow for Salvini. This coalition agreement represents a major setback for the League's leader Matteo Salvini. For 14 months, he was a dominant figure in Italian politics, but a share of power wasn't enough for him. He wanted outright power. This led him to overreach. Mr. Salvini brought down the government last week in the hope of winning a potential snap election, but it turns out that his gamble had a fatal flaw. The League's party leader did not count on the possibility of his opponents teaming up to stop him. A common name, Stop Salvini, now binds together the Five Star Movement and the Democratic Party in the new coalition. But in order for this administration to last, the two parties, who are staunch rivals, may need to find more common ground than their mutual distrust of a single man. Their coalition will be harried and chased at every step by the man they've sent into sudden opposition. Why had Salvini had enough? Following weeks of hostility between the two ruling parties, Mr. Salvini called for a snap election this month, saying that differences between his Five Star coalition partners could not be mended. A failed attempt by Five Star to scrap plans for a high-speed rail link showed that the coalition could no longer govern, the right-wing leader said at the time. However, addressing the Senate last week, Mr. Conte said that Mr. Salvini had been looking for a pretext to return to the polls since his party's success in European elections in May. The League has soared ahead of the Five Star Party in opinion polls, due mainly to Mr. Salvini's stance against illegal immigration, but has fallen back slightly since pulling the plug on the coalition. In the May elections, the League came top with 34% of the votes in Italy, whereas the Five Star Movement only had half of that. Despite this, Mr. Di Maio has said his party does not fear another election. Well, wow. So let's go from the start. A few weeks ago, Salvini and his allies with the League Party called a motion of no confidence to the leader of the coalition party, the Five Star Movement. Because of this, the Five Star Party leader, Prime Minister Conte, basically resigned, which put the Italian government in crisis, which I did a video on a few weeks ago. The actual president of Italy had the power to do two things. He could have held snap elections, which is what Salvini wanted, because Salvini and his party have been very successful and had a chance to dominate Italian politics. But the president of Italy chose to instead have another party force a coalition between them to kill the power that Salvini's party held, or even wanted more of. Salvini and his League Party is hated so much by the other parties that the other parties put aside their stark differences to work together. And this is a problem with trying to reform a government, or at the very least, protect the actual people of the country. The politicians were threatened. The politicians of the Five Star Movement, and everyone else besides the League Party, were threatened by Salvini and the League Party, and were basically getting worried that Salvini and the League Party were becoming too popular, and that he would run the country like a dictator. Now, these politicians, they didn't want this to happen. So instead of having a snap election, they decided to strip Salvini of his power and empower the leftist parties under the big tent party called the Democratic Party. Kind of like the American Democratic Party here. This party is like I said, a big tent party that incorporates many other left-wing elements in Italy. But now, with the new coalition formed between the Five Star Movement, which is a very weird party to say in the very least, but with their coalition with the Democratic Party, there will be a moderately strong leftist government in Italy as illegal aliens and migrants invade their country. That's just what's going to happen. Salvini was the only guy in power that actually wanted to enforce Italy's borders and sovereignty. He would put up a front against French President Macron and Germany's Angela Merkel and said, no, I want to put Italy first. Not you guys, put Italy first. But now, that is no more. Now Italy is going to end up like the other major European nations and be forced or gladly accept most of Africa's and the Middle East's supposed refugees and migrants, at least for now. Italy, in the current state, will eventually increase more integration into the pan-European ideals within the EU instead of thinking about the people of Italy. This new coalition will try to find ways to increase the power of the globalists, basically. Who cares what the people of Italy think or want? It's all about integration into the EU. So, because of this new coalition, the Five Star Movement, which got rid, basically, of Salvini's party and allied with the leftist Democratic Party, the socialists, the communists, this Five Star Movement is going to suffer greatly for this, in my opinion. In the last election, in 2019 in May, the Five Star Movement only got half the support of the Italian people compared to Salvini's party. 17% compared to 34%. Technically, less than half of Salvini's party. They made a deal with the devil. Instead of holding elections to see what the Italian people wanted, the Five Star Movement decided to put in power politicians that were becoming more and more unpopular, mostly from the Democratic Party. The Italian people, of course, no longer have a say in their government. Now, I will say this about the Italian government. They've had a lot of governments since the end of World War II. Probably way too many. But this is just more and more confirming to me that the Italian people don't have a voice in their government. They really don't. But in the end, this coalition won't last long. It will not. Salvini will come back. He is way too popular to not have a future in Italian politics. But of course, we'll see what happens. Some might call Salvini like the Trump of Italy, but whatever. But this is the lesson to all of us. People who support the political left are the current enemies of national sovereignty. But, we must be aware of those who would backstab us for political power. And in Italy's case, it is the Five Star Movement and its leaders that chose political power over the Italian people. But with that in mind, thank you for watching. I'm Brazen Eagle, and I hope you have a great day.